Let's say it plainly. You're not ready, and you know it. I'm not saying this as an accusation, but as a truth that has been silently haunting you for a long time. That feeling you have, that inexplicable emptiness, that discomfort that doesn't go away even when everything seems fine. It's not meaningless anxiety, it's a warning. It's the universe sharpening the sword before handing it to you. Have you ever wondered why just before something big happens in your life, it seems like everything falls apart? Friendships break, the body gets sick, opportunities vanish, motivation evaporates. You think you're moving backward, but in reality, you're being stripped of everything you're not. You're being tested not as punishment, but as preparation. And here's the part that few understand. The universe doesn't grant gifts to those who haven't been refined inside. It's not about effort or luck. It's about transformation. A transformation you can't fake because it's not enough to ask for something. You must become someone capable of holding it. Carl Jung saw this with brutal clarity. The unconscious gets tired of waiting. And when it decides it's time for a change, it doesn't ask you. It throws you into chaos. Because chaos is the language with which the soul rewrites itself. That relationship that ended suddenly, that job you lost when you needed it the most, that betrayal you didn't see coming, they weren't mistakes of fate, they were surgical interventions. They were ripping out what no longer served, what was rotten inside, but you called it injustice. Do you know what the biggest obstacle between you and what you want is? It's not the world, it's not the system, it's not others. It's the version of yourself that is still anchored to the past. That part that wants change but without letting go of control. That wants to move forward but without releasing comfort. That wants to evolve but without dying. And yes, I said die because for something new to be born in you, something old has to disappear. Your ego, for instance. That inner voice that has protected you for so long, but has now become your prison. The ego doesn't want real change. It wants superficial improvements. It wants results without risks. It wants safety, even if that means staying in a place where you don't grow. That's why when the time for transformation comes, the ego fights. It resists, and that's when suffering begins. But here's the most brutal part. Suffering is not the enemy. It's the signal. It's the key. It hurts because you're crossing a boundary, and every boundary between the old and the new requires a break. Or did you think you could cross it without paying the price? That silence you feel lately, that emptiness, it's not abandonment. It's the pause between the collapse and the reconstruction. It's the fertile ground left after the fire. And in that soil, what you plant will be stronger than ever. But only if you choose to plant with awareness. Because this moment, this space between what you were and what you will be, is the most sacred. This is where you decide whether you will be the repetition of your past or the beginning of something entirely different. Look inside. What patterns are you still repeating? What fears are you still feeding? What control are you refusing to let go of? These are the questions the universe throws at you when it's preparing you for something big. And if you don't answer them with truth, what you desire won't come. Not because you don't deserve it, but because you wouldn't be able to hold it without collapsing. Life doesn't give you what you ask for. It gives you what you embody. And embodying something means having faced everything that was stopping you from being it. That's why tests aren't punishments. They're training. Every person who disappointed you was an invitation to set boundaries. Every failure was an opportunity to choose again, this time with more wisdom. Every loss was a reminder that nothing external is permanent and that the only thing that matters is what you build inside. And while you thought the universe was ignoring you, it was actually watching you. Watching whether you chose from the wound or from awareness, from fear or from truth, from anger or from peace. That's the real test. Not what you do when everything is going well, but how you respond when everything seems to be against you. That's where your essence is revealed. And that essence, if it's authentic, will open doors you never imagined. Because the universe doesn't reward the smartest, the strongest, or the nicest. It rewards the one who is coherent, the one who dares to live according to their truth even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. And do you know why? Because real transformation is silent. It doesn't need applause, likes, or external validation. It gestates in the dark, in solitude, in renunciation. And when it emerges, it no longer needs to convince anyone. It simply is. So if you're in a moment where nothing makes sense, where everything seems on pause, where the path is full of obstacles, don't run, don't escape, don't misinterpret it. Look beyond, because you might be right at the center of the change you asked for, but you haven't yet proven you're ready to hold it. And here's the challenge. How do you respond when the universe falls silent? How do you move when there are no signs? What do you choose when no one is applauding? The world is full of people who want to change their lives, but few are willing to change themselves. They want the new chapter, but don't want to close the old one. They want the extraordinary, but resist letting go of the familiar. That's not how it works. The alchemy of real change begins when you stop searching outside for what you can only build inside. When you decide that your inner peace is worth more than any external reward. When you understand that what happens to you isn't personal, it's universal. We all go through this forge. Only some flee before completing the fire. Do you have the courage to stay within, to allow the ego to crumble, and something more authentic, deeper, and more you to emerge? Because if you do, the universe will notice, and then you won't have to chase change. Change will come to you as an inevitable consequence of the person you've become. And here at this point, the final paradox. When you no longer need it to come, that's when it comes. Because you've become the kind of human who doesn't depend on the outcome, but vibrates with the process. And that, my friend, is what the universe has been waiting for all along. Now you know you're not being punished, you're being prepared. Are you willing to take the test? And now that you've come this far, let's dive deeper into something few dare even consider. The difference between being tested and being revealed. Because yes, one thing is being pushed by life through tests, and another very different thing is discovering what those tests bring to light about you. Because when the universe shakes you, it's not transforming you from the outside. It's making visible what you already were, but hadn't yet faced. That's where most people get lost. They think they're being destroyed when in reality they're being revealed. And what surfaces sometimes isn't pretty. Insecurity, need for approval, emotional dependency, arrogance camouflaged as self-confidence, fear disguised as prudence. All that was already inside you. Only now under pressure you can't hide it anymore. And this is important. Pressure doesn't create your cracks, it only shows them. And once they're in plain sight, you can no longer pretend they don't exist. You either face them or swallow the idea that everything happens for a reason, as if it were just a decorative phrase without understanding what it truly means. But here comes the most subtle and at the same time most powerful twist. What happens to you is not to test your strength, but to cleanse your vision. You don't need to be stronger. You need to see more clearly. See what habits you repeat without questioning. What ideas about yourself you've carried since childhood. What stories you keep telling yourself to avoid facing the fact that you can no longer keep being who you were. And here enters the shadow, that part of you that you've learned to hide in order to be accepted. What you suppressed so you could be loved. What you silenced to fit in. Jung said that one doesn't enlighten oneself by imagining figures of light, but by making one's darkness conscious. Well, this is the process. The tests are the lanterns that force you to look where you've always avoided. Do you know why many people don't change even when their life screams at them to do so? Because they prefer to stay broken in the familiar rather than healed in the unknown. The ego clings to the wound because at least it's predictable. But real transformation doesn't happen in the known. It happens in the leap year. And to leap, you first have to let go. Letting go isn't giving up, it's trusting. It's telling life, I have no control, but I have faith that this makes sense. And that faith isn't blind belief. It's certainty that arises when you look back and realize that everything you lost was exactly what you needed to lose. That every breakup, every fall, every silence was an appointment with a part of you that you didn't know yet. Because true awakening isn't a mystical moment full of lights and epiphanies. Sometimes it's a Wednesday afternoon crying in the car, suddenly realizing that you can't keep living as if nothing is happening inside you. It's brutal, it's raw, but it's real. And real is the only thing that can transform you. The rest is spiritual entertainment. And the universe isn't here to entertain you. It's here to awaken you, to show you time and time again that what you seek is already inside but covered by layers of fear, pride, desire for control, and self-deception. Do you want to manifest a new reality? Perfect. But make it clear, the price is your current version. You can't carry it with you. Not because it's bad, but because it's incomplete. Because it was built from survival, not from truth. And that's the next level of this conversation. Surviving isn't the same as living. The ego survives. The soul lives. And as long as you keep making decisions to avoid pain, to please others, to maintain control, you'll keep surviving. But once you choose to act from your truth without guarantees, without results, just for internal coherence, that's when life begins. Do you know what the most powerful thing you can do when the universe tests you is? It's not to resist, it's not to endure, it's to listen. Because every test brings a message, but it's not written in ink. It's encoded in what hurts you. What bothers you the most is what you most need to review. What scares you the most is what you need to face. Pain isn't the problem. The problem is not knowing how to read it. And as long as you keep seeing difficulties as injustices instead of messages, you'll keep missing the gift they bring. You're not being punished. You're being called to remember who you are beneath all your masks. The universe doesn't want you strong, it wants you honest. Because from honesty comes real power. The kind that doesn't need to impose itself because it simply radiates. And that's the essence of true change. It's not about imposing a new version of yourself. It's about allowing the one that's always been there beneath everything you were taught to be to emerge. Are you willing to allow it? Because that and only that is what determines whether you're ready to receive what you asked for. And remember this, you're not what you go through. You're how you choose to respond. And when that response comes from your truth, not from your fear, then the universe responds because it's always been a mirror. And now finally you can look at yourself without lies. And remember this, you're not what you go through. You're how you choose to respond. And when that response comes from your truth, not from your fear, then the universe responds because it's always been a mirror. And now finally you can look at yourself without lies. Do you want to keep going? Because this is just the beginning. Let's talk about an idea that's uncomfortable, that shakes you, and that reveals self-deception as a defense and silent sabotage mechanism. What happens when it's not the universe stopping you, but yourself? Not from fear of failure, but from fear of success. Because although it sounds contradictory, there's a part of you that doesn't fear falling, but shining. Because shining means responsibility. Because manifesting that which you've asked for means that you can no longer hide behind comfortable excuses. You'll have to step forward, and this is where the mind comes into play. That incessant factory of justifications, of well-constructed stories that make you feel like you're moving forward when in reality you're just going around in circles. Does that sound familiar? That feeling of being busy, doing things, planning, learning, but not moving an inch towards where you really want to be. It's the trap of infinite preparation. The excuse of, I'm still not ready. And you know what? You'll never be ready if you wait to feel prepared for the unknown. Because true preparation isn't completed before the leap. It's activated during the fall. The mind protects you, yes, but it also paralyzes you because its job isn't to make you happy. It's to make you feel safe, even if that safety is a cage disguised as stability. And so you repeat, better the known evil. Better wait a little longer. Better not take the risk yet. And the universe watches you in silence, waiting for you to decide to let go of the rope. Because until you do, no miracle can reach you. And here lies the brutality of the process. Internal change isn't marked by intention, but by action. It's not defined by what you desire, but by what you're willing to leave behind. And this brings us to another point that almost no one wants to accept. You can't keep your old identity and receive a new life. You can't want a different reality without being willing to change your role within it. And here lies the brutality of the process. Internal change isn't marked by intention, but by action. It's not defined by what you desire, but by what you're willing to leave behind. And this brings us to another point that almost no one wants to accept. You can't keep your old identity and receive a new life. You can't want a different reality without being willing to change your role within it. Many people want things to change without changing themselves. And that's the most sophisticated sabotage. You think you're walking towards your destiny, but you're carrying a suitcase full of everything that ties you to the past. Your old thoughts, your automatic reactions, your need to be right, your addiction to drama, your obsession with understanding everything before trusting. And do you know what happens when you carry that into the future? You repeat the past over and over with different scenarios, different names, different excuses, but the same underlying pattern. Now let's talk about cycles. Not the ones on the calendar, but personal ones. Those loops that repeat in your life with surgical precision. You always end up in the same type of relationship, the same type of conflict, the same breaking point. Why? Because you didn't learn the lesson. Because instead of asking yourself, why is this happening to me? You should be asking, why is this happening again? Until you change your response, the universe repeats the question. Until you choose differently, the cycle doesn't break because life isn't ruled by time, but by awareness. And when there's no awareness, there's repetition. But when you wake up, even just a little, enough to see that you can't keep being the same, then there's no going back. Awakening is irreversible. It can hurt, it can confuse you, it can make you doubt everything, but you can no longer fully sleep again. You've seen too much, you've felt too much, and even if you try to return to your old habits, they don't feel the same anymore. You no longer fit where you used to because you're no longer the same. And that's beautiful, but also tough, because no one warns you that the price of awakening is constant discomfort, the hunger for truth, the intolerance for anything that smells like a lie, especially if it comes from yourself. Here comes an even deeper idea, the grief of identity. Because to become who you're destined to be, you first have to say goodbye to who you were. And I'm not just talking about habits. I'm talking about the image you built about yourself. That figure you created to survive, to be loved, to fit in. You'll have to let it die. You'll have to accept that many of the things you defended with your teeth and nails were just mechanisms to avoid feeling vulnerable. You'll have to accept that the strength you showed was just a mask over fear. And yes, that hurts. Because it hurts to look back and see that you've spent years trapped in an idea of yourself that wasn't completely true. But that pain is medicine. Because the more sincerely you face your illusions, the more space you create for your authenticity. And there, in that raw, unadorned space, is where the universe begins to act. Not because you've become perfect, but because finally you've become real, human, honest, willing to grow from the center, not from the facade. And when you get there, something curious happens. You stop chasing external signs. You no longer need proof that everything will be okay because you know, because you feel it, because you've become the kind of person who no longer chases alignment. They align, they adapt, they transform. And then, and only then, the universe responds with clarity, because life doesn't respond to your desire, it responds to your frequency. And when your frequency is coherent, when your energy is no longer divided between what you long for and what you fear, between what you say and what you do, everything changes because the universe simply reflects you. So here you are on the edge in front of the most powerful and honest version of yourself. And the moment to decide is not tomorrow, not when you're stronger, more ready, or less broken. It's now, because now is the only moment when you are truly free. But be careful. I'm not talking about an impulsive leap or empty motivation. I'm talking about that moment when your soul goes quiet and without words tells you enough. Enough begging for validation. Enough settling into the known pain. Enough wanting to change the world without facing your shadows. Enough postponing your healing. But be careful. I'm not talking about an impulsive leap or empty motivation. I'm talking about that moment when your soul goes quiet and without words tells you enough. Enough begging for validation. Enough settling into the known pain. Enough wanting to change the world without facing your shadows. Enough postponing your healing. The universe doesn't listen to your words. It observes your movements. And here comes the closing no one expects. What you desire already exists. It's already happening in a timeline where you chose differently, where you didn't fall into the same patterns again, where you stopped waiting for permission, where you didn't negotiate your essence. That version of you is alive right now. Do you want it? Then act like her, breathe like her, think like her, decide like her. Because the change doesn't start in the world, it starts in you. And if something within you resonated with all of this, I want you to seal it with a phrase. Go down to the comments and write, "I am ready to become who I've always been." Not because you have to prove anything, but to remind yourself in your own voice that the change has already started, that you're already moving forward. And if this video has pierced you, if it's made you question even one certainty, subscribe. Not to follow someone, but to keep diving deeper into yourself. We're not here to consume content. We're here to evolve. And the universe is already taking note.